Travis Wayne Goodsell. Back when I was on Facebook in 2014, I had a friend from England who was Mormon, and he one day modeled a Knights Templar what do you call the outfit? He had the full sword and everything, and was modeling it right there on Facebook for all of his friends to see. My goodness, slow day for Amazon. And back then, that was before I knew about the real LDS Church history, and about Joseph Smith being involved with Masons before 1842, because in 1842 he was Scottish Rites, and Scottish Rites don't have Knights Templar. And so this Mormon friend from England, in retrospect, had a bit better understanding than I did at the time. So obviously I've now surpassed him, having done the research myself. But he always spoke in code as if I knew what he was talking about. But yeah, in Doctrine and Covenants, section 45, verse 31, is where we understand that Joseph Smith knew of the viral scourge to come forth in the latter days. I've gone over this multiple times, but apparently if I can get the right title, I can get more people, as I've been demonstrating the last couple of days. And there shall be men standing in that generation that shall not pass until they shall see an overflowing scourge, for a desolating sickness shall cover the land. Now, you might say, well, we've had multiple desolating scourges, Travis. How did, Joseph Smith was just throwing it out there, trying to scare people, trying to create an end of the world thing that would be long after he's dead and gone. So why would he care? Well, because he put it in the time frame of the latter days, with the signs in the heavens. Signs in the heavens, such as, verse 39, signs of the coming of the Son of Man. Sun shall be darkened, moon turned to blood, stars fall from heaven. If you don't know your astronomy and how we're able to tell time and have a calendar system, these are all based upon astronomy, because the sun appears to go around the earth, and I say appears because we go around the sun, despite a certain other religion in their dark days history assassinating those who would dare defy the church with talk of scientific truth. And so we're able to know sunrise and sunset times to the precise second. And we're able to predict it far into the future. And even when the earth shifts to have a new North Pole in a few more thousand years, because about every 10,000, 10,500 or so, we get a new North Pole. And so all of these things are hard science because we're able to use hard science measurements, having tools such as math to confirm the measurements. Math being the measurement process. So if you have a measurement that doesn't involve a math formula, it's probably a pseudoscience, such as psychology. Pseudo being fake. And so what the Bible and Joseph Smith are giving us are precise days and hours. I know you want to push Matthew in chapter 24, who insists that no man knows the day or the hour, even though he himself gave us the day and the hour in chapter 1 and 2. That's how accurate astronomy is. And whoever put that in the biblical text of Matthew didn't have a clue what astronomy was, or he was purposely throwing people off to deceive. And so Joseph Smith knew more than just what the Bible was telling us, as he includes this desolating scourge, a sickness, which is found in the story of Moses with the Exodus. And so it's not something that you'd go, oh wow, it's a unique prophecy for Joseph. No, still, if you don't know that there's a date involved, you'd still say, oh well, he thinks that the Exodus story is comparable to the latter days, and that's just Joseph's take on it, especially when you go to section 103 verse 16, that you'd think would confirm your hypothesis. But he gives us the date and the events on that date during that year. That's the difference that the Bible doesn't give us. And technically, it wasn't Joseph Smith Jr. It was Joseph Smith Sr. Remember, the 116 pages were the beginning of the Book of Mormon, and they were rewritten. And if you're a Mormon and you're coming to my channel for the first time, this is going to come as a shock to you, but the Book of Mormon is not an accurate history of the indigenous people of America. It's encoded, just like the Doctrine and Covenants was before the 1981 edition, when they tried to decode as much as they could. Doctrine and Covenants section 1 verse 16, Babylon, for example, was not decoded. And so in the Book of Mormon, right in the very beginning, they set up the opening statement. If you've ever had to do research papers for school, or if you've done other reports for school, you're supposed to have an opening, a body, and a closing statement. Chapter 1 is the opening statement that had to be rewritten because Martin Harris, being an evil man and destroying the 116 pages. And so first you need to understand that, again, if you're Mormon, this is going to come as a shock to you. The Book of Mormon tells us that we're not Christian. Verse 2, I make a record in the language of my father, which consists of the learning of the Jews. Not the learning of the Christians, the learning of the Jews. And so when you consider the Christ, or Messiah, it is not the learning of the Christians. It is the learning of the Jews. And if you do not understand what that means, yeah, that's the whole point that the church has been doing, is taking you away from the true God of Mormonism. Because he's a man. Again, section 103, verse 16. He's a man like Moses. He's Mormon. Joseph Smith was trying to set up Zion as the Christ. It's something that this church will never tell you. But the sign that gives us a precise date, that through the use of astronomy and through math, it's calculus physics. Ugh. That really ate me alive when I took the astronomy calculus class. It was in way over my head. Nonetheless, it is confirmed that when Lehi has his dream and says he saw the heavens open, he's seeing a sign in the heavens. He thought he saw God sitting upon his throne. This is a sign in the heavens. It is not actual God sitting on an actual throne. These are signs in the heavens, with the stars representing constellations. Ophiuchus is the throne of God. God is Saturn, because he's the father of Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet that retrogrades within each constellation for a pregnancy period. So remember when Isaiah says, I give unto you a sign, a virgin conceives and bears a son. They even call him Sun God, Emmanuel. Oh, but Matthew says it means God with us. Whatever. Luke gets it right, Son of the Highest. They just leave out highest sun, as in the noon sun, which refers to Amen. Sound familiar, Mormons? Have you not heard of Adam Ondai? Exactly. And so, again, this is going to come as a shock to you if you're a Mormon and you're coming to this video for the first time. But he keeps going with the sign, because Saturn is in Ophiuchus lots of times. Each time it rotates around according to our view on Earth. And surrounded with numerous concourses of angels, that's stars, the attitude of singing and praising their God. And it came to pass that he saw one descending out of the midst of heaven, and he beheld that his luster was above that of the noonday sun. Amen. And he saw 12 others following him. That's the sign in the heavens that he sees. But then they turn into actual humans and they give him a book. And in the book he sees the destruction of section 1, verse 16. And so we know that this date, because this is a repetition of the sign of the Son of Man. One descending. That's Jupiter. That's the Son of Man, the son of Saturn. And that's the one that Isaiah talked about as a sign. That is the one that Matthew talks about, even though he claims that nobody knows the day and the hour of the sign, as he turns it into an actual live birth during the time of the Roman period. And yet the sign is supposed to appear in the latter days? What? Signs come before the event, not 2,000 years after. Again, learning of the Jews. And so John's Revelation also talks about it in great detail. In fact, exactly as the Book of Mormon talks about it, right here. And the Book of Mormon, if you get to the Tree of Life of Nephi's version, he is told that John would write the remainder of the information for the latter days. And so the Book of Mormon and Revelation are like that. So, I mean, if you need us to go to Revelation, we can do that as quickly as I can get to it. The Joseph Smith translation, which is actually a revision, it wasn't a translation. We should stop calling it a translation. And there appeared a great wonder, sign, in heaven, and Joseph Smith's revision says, in the likeness of things on the earth. Signs always precede the event. So, such as today, I did the video talking about the fulfillment of today's sign in the heavens with the full beaver moon. Beavers are so cute, they're so furry. I wonder if that's what President Benson was talking about in his solemn assembly Aaronic priesthood talk to the youth of the noble birthright when he said, don't do any petting. Don't pet the beavers. And there he gives the date. A woman clothed with the sun. Well, this is what Isaiah says is a virgin. Because there is no woman floating around out in space. It's a constellation. And if you know the times, the sun travels through the zodiac every single year, and it's with Virgo, clothing Virgo, from the middle of September, do you remember, Earth, Wind, and Fire, to the middle of October. So now we have a month span, but we don't know the year. And I've gone over this over and over again if you know your astronomy. And so the more you add to this conjunction, this sign, the more detailed of a date you're giving. Because this happens every year. Just the woman clothed with the sun. But then you add the moon under her feet. And symbolically, that means that a religion is going to be trampled under the feet of the woman who gives birth to the Messiah, Jupiter. And so, yes, we know from Scripture, and as Doctrine and Covenants 1:16 tells us, Babylon, or the whore, as John's Revelation calls her, or the great and abominable church, which the Book of Mormon goes into great detail to say that its founder is Lucifer, the devil, and so therefore it would have the sign of Lucifer, most likely carved in stone on their temple at their headquarters, so that we would all know. And again, if you're Mormon and this is the first time you're coming to one of my videos, that's going to come as a horrifying shock for you, as it would any Mormon, unless you already knew about it because you're a descendant of them. And so a crown of 12 stars. So there's Lehi's dream as he's seen Revelation, from the book of Revelation. And so again, this is a precise date. The date is the 23rd September 2017. And women should know the significance of that date. If you remember the women's conference that was finally made a part of General Conference, where the Relief Society president was having her first Relief Society meeting, with the first time that they're joined with General Conference, as she was put in April, as she used to be the primary president. The president of children becomes the president of women, virgin to woman. And so, how do we know that it's 2017? Well, what events are going to happen? Why tell us the date? You know, is it the birth of a child? No. It's a sign. Verse 4 gives us what the warning is. Because Lehi is told America, Babylon, is going to be destroyed. And so 2017 is the beginning, the birth of this attempted destruction of America. And we are informed in verse 4 of an event to confirm it. For it came to pass in the commencement of the first year, and this is 2017, of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah. Well, if we're not talking about Babylon, then we're not talking about Judah. We're not talking about Zedekiah, and we're not talking about a king. So what happened in 2017 when this sign of the Son of Man occurred? We had a new president, didn't we? And the Senate Intelligence Committee this year released report number 5, in which they acknowledged that Russia put Trump on the throne. Trump is a puppet king, just like Zedekiah was Babylon's puppet king. He was to give tribute. He did not give tribute. And thus Babylon came back 11 years later and destroyed Babylon, with the temple destroyed also. As Jeremiah talks about how wicked the people were in Jerusalem. Thus the destruction of the temple. So if you're Mormon, and this is the first video you're seeing and hearing, it's going to come as a shock to you. But Brigham Young promised it would last through the millennium, and they're making it retrofitted to last through a 7.3 earthquake. It's not good enough. Nonetheless, isn't it interesting that it will be ready in 2024 for the April 6th weekend General Conference. Guess what's going to happen on Monday, the 8th of April? A third total solar eclipse over America. The first happened when? 2017. So yes, they knew the date for the signs and for the events that were to take place. Now, I'm sure you want to believe that Joseph Smith is a true prophet, and so you're going to call it revelation rather than what it was. William Morgan came and revealed to Joseph Smith Sr. in Canandaigua, New York, where Joseph Smith Sr. was the master mason of the York Rites Lodge in Canandaigua. And the highest rank of the York Rites is the Knights Templar. And if you know anything else about the Knights Templar, you know about Friday the 13th, and you know about Southern Illinois, and you know about the Kensington Stone, which purchased the land of America, and why Southern Illinois is the crossroads between the first and the last of the 3 days of darkness. And so, as the Scottish Rites were known to have been infiltrated by the Illuminati. And this is confirmed by Albert Pike in his letter to Giuseppe Mazzini, where he is a Scottish Rites high ranker, talking about the Illuminati, as well as the doctrine of Lucifer, as they're going to set that up after this time period. So this is what we're being warned about in the Book of Mormon, that America will be destroyed and the kingdom, and thus religion included with the government, of Lucifer is supposed to be established in the aftermath. And yet, they're telling us that the learning of the Jews' Messiah is supposed to come to establish Zion, the New Jerusalem, as Joseph Smith separates them and refers to them as mountain cities. And so in that regard, for him to know of a legitimate Messiah from God, who would still be a man, that's kind of impressive. But, I don't know, maybe it was that friend from England. Unfortunately, he doesn't fit the prophecies of this guy, because he's supposed to be an American living in America, and many of the prophecies tell exactly where he lives, even his birthplace, even his birth date, even his birth time, even his name, and many other specific details in prophecy, just as the specific date for the latter days, the day and the hour. And so yes, as many people were in the beginning mocking me when I did my Return to Missouri video back in July 2017, I don't get too many mockers now. Mormons go silent when they've been confounded or when they don't like what they hear. That's one of the things I learned when I moved to Utah. But how do we know that this was indeed the date? Well, that's where the story of Moses and the Exodus comes in. Because the Exodus took place in the first month. Now, the current Jews celebrate it during Passover, which is in the spring. But there's two New Years for the Jews. One is the religious calendar, and the other is the government calendar, also called the civil calendar. And it's the civil calendar that is around September. And sure enough, the sign of the Son of Man came 3 days after, or 2 days, 2 or 3 days. I have to go back and check. Before the New Year happened before the sign of the Son of Man. And we just had a New Year as Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. And it never occurred to me that that could be the chief judge who the Book of Mormon says is murdered right before Jesus comes to America. I remember doing the video, but I thought that was very curious. I hope she wasn't murdered. But she died on the evening of the New Year for the Jews. And the year for the Jews that we're in right now is 3,333 years from the Jewish date for the Exodus. The Smiths knew this also, because the Scottish Rites, instead of Knights Templar as their highest rank is 32 degrees. Yet there's a 33rd degree honorary rank that anybody who turns 30 and above in degree can be voted on to become this 33rd degree rank by the others already in it. And so their sign or symbol is the double eagle, which Russia has this double eagle too. That I think it was 1919 when they officially adopted the seal. But Scottish Rites have had the double eagle with the 33 or 32 symbol for quite a long time. And so you have 233 degrees, 3,333 years. And what do you know? In this year, our calendar year, right before Passover, we have a virus, just like in the Moses story of the Exodus. And so now we're in the new year. First month is already come and gone. But we have the viral outbreak, as Joseph had indicated. But we are waiting for an Exodus. But according to the Moses story, it requires a judgment by a judge. So again, if you're Mormon, this is going to come as a shock to you, but you're looking for a lawsuit against the church. So we'll have to wait and see. Because Trump, last I heard from the news, has fired the defense board. So that's not good news. So even though he conceded without actually conceding to his loss in the election, which the Book of Mormon also says that this King Jacob loses 4 years after the sign. Right there in 3rd Nephi, before Jesus comes. And of course the sign of Jesus coming, John says it's on a Pegasus, and he says it's a sign. So why in the world Christians believe that this is an actual human again, like Matthew botched it, saying it's an actual birth rather than a sign? One can always wonder, but yeah, it's a sign. And that sign being the 8th of April, 2024. But notice they're in Bountiful. They're already in the Promised Land. So we need an Exodus before 2024. I'm really hoping for December. It would seem to correspond with the uniting of Saturn and Jupiter this month. Wouldn't that be nice? And I'm sure all Mormons are going to be willing and able to go with this Mormon Moses as the Great and Abominable Church loses their lawsuit. Aren't you, Mormons? You'll just say, oh, I have faith in this new guy now. Aren't you, Mormons? Because you've been reading, pondering, and praying, getting revelation as you search to know all about the coming Messiah. Haven't you, Mormons? Because I'm sure it wasn't a shock to you, as I'm suspecting, that you already knew that Jesus Christ isn't our God, that it was Ammon this whole time, right? And that you're not unhappy with my tone, so that you can use that as an excuse to not believe, aren't you? But yeah, Joseph Smith knew the date because William Morgan found out about the plans to destroy America, use a viral weapon to exterminate the people and control us, and rise from the ashes with a new kingdom and a new religion for that kingdom that has the symbol of Lucifer on their temple at their headquarters. Which of course would explain why such a religion would do away with the high priest group, making it so that elders can't receive a wife, 10 virgins, because the Great and Abominable Church has multiple wives and concubines until you become a high priest, which means not until you're a leader. So, in conclusion, Joseph Smith knew the dates because he was informed by William Morgan that they were plotting to destroy America and use a viral weapon. As the puppet president would lose the 2020 election, puppet king called himself a king, called himself the chosen one even. And he's covering up and even helping Russia. He even took down our spy planes, which every nation is allowed spy planes to go over a certain number of times per year. That was the mutual agreement that we all made. So Russia gets to send their spy planes over America, and we get to send our spy planes over Russia and other places, and Britain gets to do it, and France, etc. That was a mutual agreement, and that we all shared the information with each other so that everybody can keep each other in check. But Trump has now done away with those planes, and not only stopped them from flying, he's selling them off so that they can't be used anymore. We'd have to rebuild new ones. So isn't that interesting how he's trying to cover up for Russia? Wonder what Russia might be up to. I'm sure it has nothing to do with setting up things for an assault on Europe. And it was Fox News that said that Trump sent out our bombers to the Middle East. What would we be doing in the Middle East other than to fulfill the self-fulfilling prophecy of Christians who are not after the learning of the Jews? So, alrighty, that's enough.